live on Facebook. So hello, Julie. Hello, Chandler.
Hi.
Hi.
How are you?
Great.
Good.
Yeah.
Good. I'm going to give Facebook a minute or two just to notify everybody that we're here and that we're live. So I'll fill a little bit of airtime so that nobody misses the good conversation. So just a couple quick things about Warwick's. We've got people that join us from all over the country, and you never know. Julie, I think you're joining us from Los Angeles. Is that correct?
Yeah.
Yep. And Chandler, you're coming in from Austin. So we can have people from all over the country today. So for people that don't know, Warwick's is located in La Jolla, San Diego, California. And my little sign says 1896. I was never good at math, but that means that this year we're celebrating our 125th anniversary.
Wow.
Yeah. So while we're not the oldest bookstore in the country, we're the oldest continuously family owned. So Nancy Warwick is our 4th generation owner. Yeah. So it's kind of a big deal. I was on with a couple authors earlier today who were from England. And I was like, okay, I know 125 years to you guys isn't that big of a deal, but 125 years to us is kind of a big deal. So, yeah. And we've been in San Diego since the 30s and actually in the building that we're in right now since the 50s. So we're kind of an old established legacy here in the San Diego area. So we would love to see you come in the store if you're in our area. We are open for business. We do mass social distancing right now. So nothing better than coming in a bookstore and looking for books. But I'm going to be putting Julie's book, here we go, paperback of The Last Flight is out. And so I'll be putting that into the comment section. You can easily click on that. I always like to say, any way there is to get a book, you can get it from Warwick's. We would love for you to support us with this event tonight, but if you have a favorite bookstore in your area, order from them. They can get you the books just as easily as anybody else can. And I'm also going to put, Chandler's got a new book coming out, and so I'll put a pre-order for that. That's coming out in August. So I'll put a pre-order button on that as well. Julie and Chandler are going to talk for about 35-ish minutes tonight, wherever you're tuning in from. And so after that, I'm going to go away, but after that, I'll bring in, so there's ways for you to participate. If you're watching this on YouTube, then no, we're not live with you on YouTube later, but on Facebook tonight, you can put your questions into the comment section. I'll bring those to Julie and Chandler at about that 35-minute mark or so. So with that, I'm going to do my job, which is introducing these lovely ladies, and then I'll send it off to them. So Julie Clark is the New York Times bestselling author of The Last Flight. It earned starred reviews from Kirkus, Publishers Weekly, and Library Journal, and the New York Times called it thoroughly absorbing. And getting those starred reviews is a big deal. I mean, that's not easy to get those. Those are very coveted. Her debut, The Ones We Choose, was published in 2018 and has been optioned for television by Lionsgate. Congratulations on that. She lives in Los Angeles with her 2 sons and a golden doodle with poor impulse control. I love that. Don't all dogs have poor impulse control? They're so funny. And Chandler Baker lives in Austin with her husband and toddler, where she also works as a corporate attorney. She is the author of several young adult novels, and her adult debut, Whisper Network, which I just loved, was a New York Times bestseller. And Reese's, I always mess up Reese. Do you guys mess up Reese Witherspoon's name? It gets tied in my tongue. The W? Yeah, it gets tied in my tongue all the time. Reese's Book Club, Hello Sunshine Pick. Her new novel, The Husbands, like I just said, comes out. It says it's going to come out in August now. So I will put that into the comment section. So with that, ladies, have a great conversation, and I'll see you in about a half hour.
Okay, great. All right, Julie, I finished your book yesterday because I wanted it to be fresh in my mind. So I feel like I've come with all the questions, and I'm going to avoid being spoilery but like it is so tempting, and we might have to talk after.
We can.
I feel like I have things to say. Okay, so I have to know though, what was like the first piece of the book that came to you?
Probably Claire. My main character, Claire, is in a marriage with a very powerful man who is from a very beloved political family, kind of one step down from the Kennedys. Everybody loves them. Everybody knows them. He's very philanthropic. He's in the news all the time doing wonderful things, and he's handsome and he's charming. He's like JFK Jr., except not JFK Jr., because her husband, Rory, is abusive behind closed doors, and he's escalating. So Claire is kind of in a situation where she needs to leave, and she needs to leave now. And so that was really where I started with Claire. It's sort of like, how would a person who had money, she's, part of this massive family, they have a lot of money, they have a lot of access, they have a lot of everything. How would she disappear? We've read all those books about the scrappy person who does all the tricky things to leave. But I was wondering how a person with, unlimited funds would manage to disappear. And what Claire feels is that she can't really just tell the world what Rory is like, because she doesn't think they'll believe her. Number one, they know Rory. Rory's been, they grew up with Rory, or I've watched Rory since he was a boy. He's not that way. And she knows that it would get turned back on her based on everything she's seen with other women who've come out to accuse powerful men of things like this. So she decides that she's not going to bother with accusing him. She's not going to bother with divorcing him. She's going to just disappear. And so I started really with that question of how would a woman disappear, vanish? In our tech-saturated world, how would a woman make herself gone, where nobody could find her no matter what? So she buys a fake ID, she gets a new passport, she squirrels money away for a year. She's all set to go. She's got everything waiting for her in a hotel in Detroit. There's a campaign event there. She's going to slip across the border in the middle of the night. And but she will just simply vanish without a trace. That's her plan. And she has planned it out to the minute. But of course, that plan fails. So then Claire finds herself at an airport bar, desperate. Her husband is hours away from discovering what she was about to do. And she meets another woman who seems equally desperate to escape her life. And so they hatch a plan to trade plane tickets. So Claire will travel to Oakland as Eva, and Eva will travel to Puerto Rico as Claire, thinking that that will give them both a chance to kind of slip away and disappear. But when Claire lands in Oakland, she sees that the Puerto Rico flight went down. And so she's stuck in Oakland with Eva's wallet, her keys, her ID, everything. And she decides to kind of hide out at Eva's house. But people in Berkeley have noticed that Eva has gone missing, and Claire has stepped into a situation that she doesn't know anything about. So really, Claire was the beginning for me. I thought about having her disappear sort of like maybe a natural disaster or a terrorist event. And then I just kind of moved away from that. But I needed her to be able to be presumed dead without them to being able to find a body. That was like my main, that had to happen or the book wouldn't happen.
Right.
So that was really where I started with, could she do it? Could she do it in a way that nobody would find her? And when these obstacles crop up, which they always do at the beginning of a book, what kinds of workarounds would she figure out?
Yeah. That's so interesting to me, because I feel like just, talking shop, I would have thought you would come at it from the flight. And I guess maybe that's because in hindsight, it's called The Last Flight, and that seems so baked into the DNA of the book. I would have thought you had the idea of two people switching.
No, that was
places.
I didn't start there. And in fact, I was really kind of in a pickle, because someone had already written a book about somebody using 9/11 to disappear and start over somewhere else, because that to me was really intriguing.
Mm-hmm.
So as soon as I thought, okay, well, maybe it'll be a plane crash, but then you're either on the plane or you're not on the plane. You can't, it's not ambiguous at all. And
right.
So at that point, that's when I thought, what if she finds a ticket? What if she trades a ticket? What if somebody gives her a ticket? And at that point, I kind of started working my way into the idea of Eva. So Eva came later as well. And I only invented her because I needed her to be desperate enough to trade a plane ticket with Claire.
Yeah. That's really fascinating. Do you usually come at books through character first, do you feel like?
Character in a what if situation. Yeah. So I don't think it's just a character. I don't think that I'm thinking of a housewife who, this or that. It's more of what if a housewife did X? What if a housewife did Y?
Okay.
But I generally need both.
Mm-hmm. Okay. Who then? So you've got two characters now, after you've kind of backed your way into a dual point of view.
That was not intentional. Yeah.
Yeah, and that's difficult, and the women are so different but so fleshed out and have really, really great backstories that are so fascinating and kind of unravel as you learn more about the women. But was there one that was easier to write than the other?
I think Claire was easier to write because she's in the present moving forward. And so it's really easy to have that baked in sort of tension.
Yeah.
Of, is he going to figure out what she's done? Is she going to get caught? Are the people who are after Eva going to figure out who she is? Are they going to come after her? All of those questions are sort of like, they're just right there on the page, you know? So that was definitely easier to write Claire. It was much, much harder to write Eva, but I actually liked writing Eva better.
Okay. Interesting. What did you like writing about her?
I think just because she was so complicated, you know, and I really liked writing a character who makes really, I don't want to say despicable choices, because I think Eva had a reason for every choice she made, but I really am fascinated by these complicated people and characters and people who do and say things that we would never do, and then figuring out a reason why to make that believable, you know, so that the reader is still on their side. You know, I love rooting for a bad guy, you know, I just love that. I love the bad guy that owns our heart. I just think that's fun.
Yeah. Yeah. And I mean, I found the reasons you gave Eva for sort of misbehaving in certain ways so relatable. Like I didn't dislike her at all, even as I knew that she was
that was my
bad
goal.
things.
I didn't want anybody to dislike her. And so far, I mean, I think people are like, why does she have to do that? You know, but I mean, you know.
Yeah. And I'm surprised to learn almost that you started with Claire, because I feel like Eva's backstory is really, really rich. Like she has a lot of her history. I mean, part of that is that she's based in the past and, you know, she's in a different situation, but yeah, you have a lot there on the page for.
I did get a lot in. Yeah, I know. As you write a new book, you always look at the old one and you're like, oh.
Like, wow, it's so fully baked, right?
Yeah.
I know it's so hard to get it to that point.
It really is. I know. And then when you do, you're like, how did I do that? I don't know.
Yeah, you think it all just came at the beginning, but I'm sure it came in later.
It doesn't. A lot of it doesn't come till the very end.
So a lot of the book is sort of about, I guess, finding like women finding their voice. And it came out sort of on the heels and the throes of the Me Too era. How did the Me Too movement inform the book, or was this something you were already working on? Kind of where in the lexicon was this?
You know, I really I feel like in today's world, it's important that we put women on the page who behave like women we know and like women we are. And so, you know, I do enjoy a good unreliable female narrator. I love having the rug pulled out from under me, and I love all that. But I also feel like, you know, I have an obligation as a teacher, as a parent, that, you know, I'm writing really strong, savvy women because those are the people that I know. You know, and so that was my number one goal, was to write 2 strong, relatable, reliable characters for my main characters. And then, you know, I was revising it really during the Kavanaugh hearings. And so a lot of that stuff just seeped in, a lot of that feeling of like hopelessness, of like, it doesn't matter what we say, does it? It just really doesn't matter, you know? And so a lot of that really seeped into Claire's hopelessness as well, of just, it wouldn't matter. I could have it on video and people still would say it's my fault somehow, you know?
Yeah.
So,
and women just feeling, I mean, I felt a lot of the Kavanaugh hearings, and I felt a lot of like Brock Turner in it. And it doesn't face those issues necessarily like head on, and like the sexual harassment part of the Me Too movement necessarily, but I think it shows women's sort of distrust of the legal system. And that really comes through with Eva as well, which I found those echoes so fascinating. And like, how do you feel that, like, do you feel like these women are good ambassadors for like the quote unquote Me Too movements? Like, how do you think that they fail or prevail in carrying out that message?
I think they're okay ambassadors. You know, I don't think that there's any one person who can be a good ambassador, because the kinds of decisions that you have to make in a situation like that aren't clear cut, and there is a sense of loss. There is a trade-off. You gain something, but you lose something too. And so every woman who finds herself in those situations is playing that sort of, if I do this, then that's going to happen. If I get this, then I lose that. You're always thinking about, what am I going to lose? And is it worth it to lose that? Can I afford to lose that? And some women say, yes, I can. And other women say, no, I can't. So I think that for Claire and Eva both, I think they're real ambassadors for that movement. There is a lot of conflict there. It's not a clear-cut choice where you should do this or you shouldn't do that. Women are often forced to make decisions between bad and worse.
Yeah. And both of them are so sort of street smart in their own way, even though, Claire comes from a very privileged background and Eva much less so, but they've both sort of been knocked down several pegs in a way that like they don't follow like the perfect woman's playbook. Like they are trying to play it smart, and they are, looking out for themselves to some extent. And
I mean, and I didn't want to portray Claire at the beginning of the book, even though she's going through something really hard and really traumatic and her life is awful, and she's not a victim. She's had enough. She's done. She's out. She finds plenty of ways to kind of poke the bear with her husband and stand up for herself and to carve out her own little corner of her world that she owns, that nobody can take away from her. And she's made a plan, and her plan is actually really, really good. It's not her fault that it falls apart. So I think that that's what I wanted to put on the page was just two women who really were smart and willing to take risks, and things were bad, but they could always be worse.
Yeah. You have a really beautiful dedication at the beginning of the book. At what point did you decide to include that?
That was very, very late. And I really thought long and hard about, do I really want to do this? I don't want it to be a political book. I don't want people to read the dedication and be like, another one of these, I don't want to read that, But at the same time, I felt like I was tackling some issues that would really speak to a lot of women. Yeah. And I felt like to not reach out and acknowledge those women who have been in this position, who have made these tough decisions, wouldn't have felt right either. So, I'm really glad that I went with it. I've gotten nothing but really nice, emails and messages about, thank you so much. And the dedication I think the dedication really strikes a chord with a lot of women, whether they've experienced something like that themselves or not. They know somebody who has, they've cared about somebody, a friend, a loved one, a sister, a cousin, a mother. They've all had somebody in their life that has experienced that.
Yeah. I think it definitely is a lovely touch. I'm glad that it's been well received. To that end, kind of what's the importance of female friendship in the narrative of your book?
I think that really for me, I wanted to also have women sticking up for women, I mean, you work out in the world, you're an attorney, right?
Yeah, barely anymore, barely. But yeah.
But I think that a lot of times, women are encouraged to kind of tear each other down, to compete against each other. There's limited slots for women. And so, you've got to go all out, and, they're sort of goaded into that. And I prefer to live in a world where women support other women, where women stick up for other women, where women stand up to other women, and for other women. So that was really what I wanted. I wanted it to be a very female-centric, friendship-centric, like, the female friendships that I have in my life, have had for 30, 40, almost 50 years, Yeah. So to me, that feels like that should be on the page,
Yeah. And the female friendships in the book are, such the saving grace for your characters. And I think that that's the reality for a lot of women. I mean, female friendships, there's just something so special about them. And I think it's because women do share a lot. I think many of our relationships are very confessional, and we feel close by sharing the details of our lives with each other. And I love sort of that emotional journey, especially for Eva. And for Claire in the beginning of the book as well, that just forging those friendships in hardship and letting them carry them is such a powerful thing. It sounds like you have good friends. So what role have your friends played in your career, in your life?
Oh my gosh, my writing friends for sure. I mean, they hear all the ups and downs and, they understand the business and they understand, how it can sometimes feel unfair. It can sometimes be exhilarating and grueling, and it can sometimes be those two things at the exact same time.
Yeah.
And so it's just nice to have friends to talk to about that, and to know that, other people have been in that spot before, and, other people will be in that spot again. And, you have to always pay it forward, and so I'm always looking to see who else, behind me that I can help lift up, that I can help as I was by other people, because again, there's, thousands and thousands and thousands of books that are published every year that don't get the kind of attention that they deserve for being fantastic books. And so whenever I can, I want to do that.
How did you make your writing friends?
Let's see, a lot. Let's see. My very first writing friend I met in a writing class, an online class at UCLA. And she was really one of my first critique partners, first readers. She writes young adult and picture books. Alexandra. Hi, Alexandra. Alexandra Alessandri. She has a new book coming out soon, a picture book coming out in another 2 months. Los Colores, Go to School. And so I'm looking forward to that one. But I think, a lot of it's just Facebook and friends of friends and, events and things like that. So I do think that, you find your writing tribe where you find them. And when you find them, it's just, you hang on to them,
Yeah. Yes, I feel so connected with other authors. I'm sure you feel this way too. Like, I feel like anybody that I've passed and met briefly, I'm like, they're my friend, because so few people understand what it's like to some extent, and what you're talking about with publishing terms and, all the weirdness of it. So I agree. You've got to have those friends, or you just, when people ask me for writing advice, I feel like that's one of my biggest things. I'm like, find your friends, because not only will you need critique partners, but also it's just so solitary. And if you're just going at it alone without anyone holding your hand, you're not going to stick with it. It's just, it's impossible to. What does your writing day look like?
It starts very early. I teach, so I need to be out of the house, to go to school and do all of that. So I start writing at about 3:45 in the morning, and I write until about 6.
3:45?
Yeah.
Wow.
And that's like I had a day off the other day, and so I got up at 3:45 to do my regular 3:45. I'm working on revisions right now, so I have like 50 pages that I try to get through in a chunk, right? Like I have 50-page chunk. That's my job. And so, the morning I woke up at 3:45 and I got through my 50-page chunk and I put all the revisions in, and I was like, oh yeah, maybe I'll do another one after my appointment. I'll come back and do another 50-page chunk. It'll feel so good. I'll be ahead, And so I got at like 11:30. And I picked up my next 50-page chunk and I looked at my first note on it. And I think it was something simple, like just grow this more, right?
Yeah.
And I just looked at it and looked at it and looked at it and was like, I don't know how to do that right now. Like I can't do that. I just can't do it. And so I thought, okay, so I mean, like for me, really 3:45 to 6 in the morning,
when your most fruitful time.
It's my most productive time. I mean, and it can be 6 to 8, if I sleep in, but it's that when I just wake up, I have a pot of coffee, my mind is soft, I am, the words come easier, the ideas. And so like that 50-page chunk, I picked it up this morning and I saw that same note and I was like, oh, I know what I'll do. And it just came, and it took 2 seconds to figure that out. I couldn't do it at 11:30. I couldn't do it. So I try just to let myself have that time and not really feel like if I'm on a deadline, I'll work a little bit longer, and weekends I'll work a little bit longer. But usually by the time I have a pretty tight deadline, I'm very familiar with the book. I'm very familiar with what I need to do. Like my editor and I have talked, we're like set, we're going, and it's just, head down, push forward, 8-hour days for the week or whatever,
That made me curious if there is like a big, like anything really big that changed in the last flight with your editor, working with your editor?
Yeah, there's one really big twist at the end that when we submitted it and she bought it, she was like, okay, well, I think I want one more twist at the end. And that had been feedback that we'd gotten from other editors who had passed. So like, we kind of knew like, yeah, we're going to need to do that. But I just was like, I don't know what to do, like I just was stuck. And so I was talking to a writer friend and we were talking through like, what if this, what if that, and it just came to me. And so it's one of the biggest twists in the book that ends up tying a lot of things together that were sort of bothering me, but I was ignoring them. How you kind of be like, let's not think about that. It'll be
Yeah, you're like, you just kind of skate it there. Maybe no one will notice. We'll just keep on.
I'm sure it'll be fine. Yeah.
Yes.
And so it kind of tied those two things together for me. And so
now I'm so curious which one it is. Yeah.
And the reason why it's such a big twist, I think, and why it hits the people so hard is that, they're like, I didn't see that coming. And it's like, I didn't either,
Is it that last page?
No, not that last page.
Okay.
No. That one I knew very early on. I always know how my books are going to end.
Really? Okay. I always have an idea, but I definitely end up rewriting my ending.
Oh yeah, I definitely rewrite it, but I generally know like what, they're going to end up here, they're going to end down here. I know that.
Yeah. Definitely my most recent book. Like I knew where it was going to end. So when you get up in the morning, do you try not to check email or anything? Like, are you trying to stay that soft? Okay.
I try not to, but sometimes I do. It just depends on what I have ahead of me. Sometimes it's easy work and I kind of take a little peek.
Okay. What a purist. I love it. I've never had that kind of self-control ever.
I stop and peek a lot.
Okay.
Yeah.
I mean, I guess like a 3:45 to 6 is not a super email heavy traffic.
No, I mean, although I'm on the West Coast, so
some people are up.
I usually wake up to an email from one of my foreign agents for something or other, so I do try to deal with that stuff first. I do have like a little bit of coffee first, so sometimes I'll jump on Facebook as I'm kind of waking up if I'm feeling really, really foggy, but
yeah,
I tried to limit that to like 10 minutes tops. Usually that's enough to get the caffeine going.
Are you an outliner?
No, not really.
No.
I try to outline. And I get it all planned out. Oh, that sounds really great. And then I start writing and like, I just don't ever look at it again.
What a high wire act if you're doing, you're doing 2 points of view and you're doing more than one time frame.
I outline after the fact. So after the draft is done and it's pretty much in good shape, then I'll go back and outline and see how everything maps out. You know what I mean? Like I'll have
you outline what you have.
Yeah, I'll have like chapter 1 and I'll click off like, okay, it text that subplot and that subplot and here's kind of what happens. And so then I can kind of get a big global, it's usually like a big long taped together 8 or 9 pieces of like computer paper taped together every chapter. And I can kind of see like, okay, where are there holes? Where did I drop a subplot? Where did I, so I generally do that, but that's after. It's not outlined to create, it's outlined to tighten. I do that.
Right.
And I do that with this one.
I've started doing some of that too, like doing a chapter by chapter outline of what I've actually written so that then I can kind of give myself a map for how to revise it afterwards. But I don't know, I'm so back and forth. I always tell myself I'm sort of a recovering pantser. Yeah. But then this time I went back to pretty much no outlining and it was so painful.
Did you outline the Whisper Network?
I wrote a very extensive synopsis, but I veered away from it pretty quickly, I feel like. So.
But sometimes I think that helps. Like, I think it helps to write stuff like that out because then you kind of have like at least color on the paper, right?
Yeah. Yeah. I don't know. Part of the like artistic me is kind of enjoying embracing the discovery of not having an outline, even though it really does create a headache. I don't know. I don't know how you feel each time you start a new book, but I always think like I figured it out on the last book. I've got my process down. But does your process change book to book?
It's different every time. It's different every time. My first book I wrote straight through from beginning to end. I mean, and I wrote The Last Flight straight through from beginning to end too, including the different POVs, but then I took it apart. I mean, I really took it apart and then spent months on just Claire chapters and just reading through Claire's chapters, just Claire for months. And then same thing with Eva, same thing. And then breaking it down by chapter and putting everything on note cards and arranging the note cards so that, you know, the chapters would kind of flow. Claire was in pink, Eva was in green or whatever, and just making sure that I didn't have too many clumps of pink, too many clumps of green, you know, and making sure that like their high tension moments were sort of at the same time, you know, which was a little tricky and had to move things around. And so that was really the last thing that I did before I sent it off to my editor.
What was the hardest part to write?
The airport scene.
The airport scene. Okay.
I probably wrote where they trade tickets.
Interesting.
At least 10 times, different ways. I wrote it from Eva's point of view. I wrote it from Claire's point of view. I went back to Eva. I went back to Claire. I went back and forth on what Eva tries to tell Claire. What does she tell Claire? You know, because it really is a dance that Eva has to do. She has to approach this woman who is running for her life right now and scared of her own shadow and convince her to trade a plane ticket. Like, how do you do that? You know?
And so, it's such a critical, I mean, it is the crux of the book. It's
if
so
you can't
critical.
pull that off, then nothing, your readers are gone, you know? Yeah, your readers are gone. And so I actually had her give this outrageous story because I felt like it couldn't be the truth, right? Oh, I'm a drug dealer and I'm running from, you know, my dealer and or the law. Can't really tell you that because Claire would be like, that's a hard pass, you know? So she needed to have a benign reason to want to disappear. And so sometimes I think the more outrageous the story, the more believable it is, you know? Right. And if somebody can really sell it, then, you know, go for it.
Do you have a favorite scene or favorite part of the book?
Probably the last chapter with Eva. The very last.
The epilogue?
Yeah, the epilogue is probably my favorite.
Good one. It's a good one. Yes, I was not expecting that. I love books with a really good kick at the end.
Yeah,
I feel like you have such a good kick at the last moment. Did you, I mean, you said you knew the end, but did you know the twists? Like, when did all the twists come to you?
Aside for that last big one that I was talking about earlier, most of them came as I went along. You know, as you write, you kind of, as a reader, you know, like, okay, something needs to happen here. You know, you kind of have that innate sense of like pacing of, you know, okay, something needs to go wrong, or, you know, something needs to surprise them, or some, you know, what they wanted needs to be now something different, you know, just kind of having those landmarks. And really, as you're writing, you just stop and think like, well, what would really mess her up?
Yeah.
You know, like what would make things worse? How can I make things worse? You know, at least the first half.
Yeah. You do such a good job with rising tension. I feel like I've been so focused on rising tension recently because it's so hard to pull off. And I give you so much credit for, you know, raising the stakes constantly and, you know, tightening that noose around your characters. Like it's just hard to make things worse for your characters and not back yourself into a total corner.
Yeah, it's really hard.
So this book has come out and it was a great thriller. The other question I wanted to ask before I forget is, why did you set it in Berkeley? Are you teaching in Berkeley?
No, I worked at the University of California at Berkeley for a number of years after I graduated from college. I worked in the athletic department there actually. So there's several scenes and places, athletic venues and stuff in Berkeley as sort of a shout out to my time there. It was just a great time of my life. I just loved living there. I was young. I had no responsibilities. It was my first job. It felt like college because I was basically working in a college town at the college. I didn't have any papers. I didn't have any finals. I didn't have to wake up early for class. I mean, I had to go to work every day, but you know, that was pretty easy. And so, you know, it was a great job and a great place. Berkeley's really, really special. It's just a really special place. I don't think there's any place else on earth like it. and the people there are really special. And so for me, I wanted to set a book there just so that I could go back and be there again, you know?
Mm-hmm. Again, I've never seen a book set there that I can think of. Definitely not a thriller I can think of. So
No,
it felt very fresh, which I loved. What do you hope that readers gain from reading Last Light?
I think that the majority of women are smart and savvy, and we're problem solvers, you know?
Mm-hmm.
I think that, you know, time and time again, we see the problems are solved by women.
Yeah. Yes, I definitely agree with that. Are you, you said you have 2 sons, is that right?
Yeah.
Did I make that up? Okay.
I have.
So, so problem solving, how have you found sort of balancing work and writing and family? I feel like this is a question that can chafe women. So I'm also curious how it strikes you, but hopefully coming from another working mom, it's.
I'm a single mom, so I'm it in the house. So the boys are older though, they're 12 and 15. So, you know, they kind of do their own thing. Like I came out here, my 12-year-old is set up with his dinner whenever he wants to eat it. And, you know, my 15-year-old isn't home, he'll be home later. And, you know, so they're very independent. So at this point, it's not hard at all. You know, they do their own thing. They're in their room, they're talking on, you know, Discord or whatever it is they're talking on with their friends. And I kind of am doing my own thing. So, you know, they come out for food and, you know, to tell me something funny or, you know, to ask me a question or to say I need help with my laundry. But other than that, you know, we all just kind of cohabitate and do our thing.
Mm-hmm. How interested or not interested are they in the fact that you're an author?
I think they're interested. I mean, you know, I think that they're interested in the sense that they think it's really cool. It's opened a lot of doors for them. I also think that, you know, my 15-year-old has read The Last Flight. He didn't read my first book. He read The Last Flight and loved it, thought it was really great, as he should, right? That's the only appropriate answer for him to give.
Just feeding you.
Right, exactly. And so, you know, but my 12-year-old, he doesn't have a passion for reading. We're still working on that. So he's like, yeah, it's cool.
Yeah.
You know, it's cool. When I told him I hit the bestseller list, he was like, is that hard?
What did you do to celebrate it?
I don't even remember. I mean, for the paperback, it was just, you know, a lot of phone calls and, you know, FaceTimes and talking to people. For the hardcover, you know, I promised myself I would buy myself something, you know, special for that. And I did. And so, you know, but it just, yeah, I mean, it was just like, it was all during the pandemic. So there really wasn't anything you could do, you know, we all kind of celebrated separately. Yeah.
Like this with Zoom toasts, right?
A lot of that, a lot of phone calls, a lot of Zoom toasts, a lot of stuff like that. Yeah.
Chandler, I didn't want to interrupt. Do you still have any other questions or were you kind of wrapping up?
Yeah, no, we would, if you have any questions or.
Yeah, we got some from the audience coming in. Great. So that's always good. My curiosity though, to quickly, Julie, and I was listening in the background, but I got distracted for a minute. What do you teach?
5th grade.
5th grade.
Yeah.
Okay. Oh,
yeah.
That's
wow.
That keeps you on your toes.
It does. Yeah.
Do you see yourself continuing to just do dual?
Yeah.
Yeah.
I like it. I mean, I'm certainly, as I was telling Chandler, not more productive when I have time during the day to do more writing. Like, I don't think that I would be more productive. I think the pandemic also showed me that.
Right.
And so I like having a place to go every day. I like the health insurance. I like the regular paycheck. You know, with book advances, you get a little bit now, you get a little bit then, you get a little bit then. 5 years from now, you get a little bit more.
Right.
And so, you know, it's not necessarily something as a single mom I want to rely on. Every book is different. Every book's income is different. And so you can't say, oh, I'm good, let's just do it. You know, I think my agent would lose a ton of sleep if I told her I was quitting my job, you know? And so that's not really, but I like my job, you know, and that helps. I really like the kids that I work with. I like doing what I do. And so why wouldn't I keep doing it? I'm about 7 years away from retirement. So I'll retire and get my full pension at 30 years and, you know, then be a retired lady of leisure and still probably write for 2 hours a day.
Did you know you always wanted to be a writer? Was that always something that was there?
I did, but I didn't really start until my kids were older. You know, until then, my youngest was sleeping through the night, which was late, like 5 years old, something like that.
Wow.
Yeah. So I didn't really start until he was 5.
Chandler, did you always know you wanted to be a writer?
Yeah, I knew I was always wanted to be involved with books. I don't think I thought writer was really a job that one could have. I mean, it didn't feel kind of real. So I started kind of looking into it when I was, I think, a junior in college. And then once I sort of caught the bug, then I just was like going after it full throttle. But it took a long time from that point to.
That's what I think that people that watch this and aspiring writers don't really understand how long the process is.
It's a long time. I mean, when I started writing, it was when my boys were little. I was looking for a way to pay for preschool. You know, like preschool is expensive here in Los Angeles. And every month it was like the rent of a small apartment is how much I was paying for preschool. And it was really stressful. And so I thought, you know what? I'm just going to write a book and then I'll sell the book and then I'll get a lot of money. And you know, it doesn't happen that way. And so once I started, I realized how hard it was. And every now and then I'd be like, why am I doing this? But then I figured I'd invested so much time in it already. I might as well just keep going, you know? And so by the time my first book was published, it was, 2018. So, 3 years ago. So my kids were 12 and 9.
Right. But you started like back in preschool.
Not in preschool anymore.
Right.
Yeah.
I just don't think that people really understand. And the thing that people need to understand is it's worth that amount of weight and work.
It is.
If you've caught the bug to really want it, then yes,
you would. I mean, really, it just takes persistence and time.
Right.
Yeah.
It really just does. And it takes a willingness to go back and do it over again, and then do it over again, and then do it over again, and then again after that. If you are in it to have your art appreciated, you're probably going to have a rough time.
Yeah. Because I've had authors that have said, "Oh, I don't need a copy. I don't need an editor." It's like, yes, you do. I've never even read up the word that you've written, and I'm going to tell you right now, yes, you do.
It's just not. If you want to be successful and you want to have a career at it, you have to be open to that. You have to.
Yeah, but I always tell people, I mean, for somebody that has the dream of being an author, I feel like it's such a lucky dream to have because there's no capital requirement to it.
No.
You don't have to move to LA. You don't have to know anyone. You don't have to, all you need is a word processor and yourself. And that's it. And there aren't a lot of creative aspirations where that is true.
And where the potential can be a really good potential at the end of that.
Yes. Exactly.
With that hard work. And I loved in the conversation, because I was sitting in the background listening, I loved, I think all of us had during and before the pandemic, the Kavanaugh hearings were a touchstone PTSD, I think, for everybody. I think they were just that. They just seemed to seep into everybody's books that were writing books about that time period. Because it's just, Okay, so enough about me and about what I wanted to know. Sorry about that, everybody. Barbara on Facebook, she says that The Last Flight was one of her favorite books from last year.
Thank you.
Thanks, Barbara, for that. And then Alyssa has a question. She says, thank you for holding the event. You are welcome for that. She was wondering how Julie identifies sources for her research. Like with the ones we choose, did she already have connections with geneticists, or did you cold call? And
I had to go out and get a geneticist to work with me on that. I didn't know anybody, but I did a call out in one of my mom groups on Facebook and said, does anybody know a geneticist that I could talk to? I'm writing this book. And my friend Mary Beth said, my husband's a geneticist. He'd be happy to talk to you. And so now I'm friends with Dr. James West, who is a geneticist, and he's got all kinds of degrees and all kinds of things. And he's a doctor at Vanderbilt. So that's.
Did your first book have the thriller aspect to it too, or was that?
No, it was more of like an upmarket women's fiction.
Got it.
Yeah, so not a thriller.
Okay, what are you working on next?
I am working on a story. Yeah, I am working on a story about a con artist, a female con artist who targets corrupt men, and she has just returned home to pull her last con on the man who destroyed her childhood.
Oh, I love it.
Yeah,
and
the reporter who's on her trail.
Oh, sounds really good. It sounds like kind of a combo of the two. Is there a little bit of a thriller aspect, but it sounds like it's the fiction. Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, it's definitely going to be like suspense. I don't know that it's going to be the same type of thriller that The Last Flight is, although a lot of people take issue with that and they're like, it's not really a thriller, you know?
Right.
So I mean, and really, I'm not in charge of categorizing it. That's my publisher decides what they want to sell it as. So, you know, I don't know what they'll end up.
Well, because a lot of books have a lot of, I mean, we all need as a bookstore, you need kind of the elevator pitch to it, but
you do,
a lot of books have a lot of things that kind of intermix where they've got a little bit of this. I mean, and you always, even with just a straight fiction, you have to have tension. There has to be tension, or else why are you reading it? You know,
and I think that for me, and I think Chandler does this really well too, is that with the suspense that we write, we always have that female, like, emotional third rail to it. You know, it's not just about plot. There's like the internal landscape of people's lives as well, and how they're changing from the beginning to the end, and what they've learned along the way, and what they've gained and what they've lost. And so I think for any book that I write, it's always going to have that. And that's very common and typical in upmarket women's fiction.
Right.
And so I think my books are always going to have that. Right. You know, will it always be like a cat and mouse thing? Maybe. I mean, you know, the next book that I'm working on, we just finally landed on a title called The Lies I Tell.
Love it.
And you know, it does cover the kind of internal landscape of these two women who, you know, one of them is a con artist, and she's been a con artist for years. And like, what does that mean to be a con artist?
Exactly? Yeah.
How does that affect your life, your relationships? What is it that you want? You know, I mean,
how did you develop into that? You know, what was your childhood like?
Most artists are sociopaths, but like, I'm not going to write about a female sociopath. So like, there's got to be other things going on, you know? Yeah. Same thing with the reporter after her. Like, what is it that happened to her that's making her drive so hard to get this story and to find this woman? And expose her. What is it that she hopes to get out of it?
Well, and that's the thing that makes the read. It's not just this page turning thing that you're trying to find out what happened. It's got a much richer substance to it. Yes. You know, and that I think is
really important for me as a reader. You know, for books that don't have that, I'm not as engaged in. You know. Yeah. It's easier for me to walk away from it because I'm just not that invested.
Yeah. Chandler, do you still write YA, or you've gone strictly to the adult world?
I do. I have a YA book that's co-written with another person, Wesley King, that comes out in September. So that's kind of the only other YA thing I've written recently. I feel like I'm focused on adults, but when the right thing strikes, then I've been doing it. Yes.
Well, we're about out of time. So Chandler, for people who want to find out more about you, do you have a website we could direct people to?
Yeah, chandlerbaker.com, or I feel like I'm most active sort of on Instagram at Chandler Baker Books.
Chandler Baker Books. Okay. Yep. That's what people say. Either you're a Twitter or you're Instagram. It's one of the two for people. How about you, Julie? You got a website, or where do you want to send people?
JulieClarkAuthor.com and Julie Clark Author on Instagram as well.
Okay. Perfect. Yeah. Well, ladies, this was fantastic.
Thank you so much.
Thank you so much.
Thank you both for your time. Hopefully one day we will have you both physically in person here in San Diego with us.
That would be fun.
So we'll keep our fingers crossed for that. So I'm gonna say goodnight to Facebook and turn off the recording.
Don't miss this one, guys. It's good. It's good. It's good.
we got both.
Don't miss it. Pre-order it.
And like that's true. It's like I like to say, anywhere you can get a book, you can get it here, or support your local independent.
Please buy it from an indie.
Yes. Well, congratulations, Julie.
Thank you.
Very exciting stuff.
Thank you. Okay. All right. We'll talk soon.
Good night.
All right.
Bye, everybody.
Good night.